Hi, I'd like to welcome you and to welcome our guests. We have Robb Zuniga and Jenn, excuse me, I'm giving you a new name, Jenn Zuniga. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you. Pleasure to have us
Thank you.
on.
Robb, Jenn, you guys are, I call you military couples. And because I don't have that military background, I don't necessarily speak the language as well as some do. So, would you help me out a little bit and tell me how that works in terms of? I know you've been deployed 3 times and you guys got married somewhere and all of that, and now you have something a little new happening. So, you want to share with us a little bit about how the deployments and how the marriage piece fit in, and give us the language a little bit so we can keep up with how the military marriage worked here.
Okay, sure thing. Well, I was in the service from 2000 to 2007, and I was active duty stationed at Fort Drum, New York. And so I met Jen before I had enlisted in the Army, and so we were dating at the time. But when we got married after right before my second deployment overseas to Afghanistan, so
Okay, okay. So, when did you guys get married?
in 2003.
2003. The anniversary date is
Well, we actually celebrate June 25th, 2004,
okay,
because that was when we celebrated with friends and family.
June 25th.
Yeah.
So, there's a little bit of a story there, obviously. You chose, like many couples do, to have a very private ceremony initially and then a very public one later. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct. Well,
Okay.
the deal was Jen was going through her immigration, and so our first marriage, we were starting her immigration up, and we kind of had an idea that in case our actual marriage didn't work out, the actual wedding ceremony didn't work out, we would have this as a backup, and so we kind of had a private ceremony just to start her immigration process.
Okay, all right.
Hmm.
So, I just want to make sure I got that right. You did the private ceremony just in case the public one didn't pan out right,
Yes,
because the private ceremony would allow you to take care of the immigration process.
right,
Okay,
Yes.
right.
all
We
right.
needed a head start on it.
Great, great.
And as fate would have it, 10 days before our unit deployed, we got or actually 10 days before our wedding ceremony, our unit got the orders to jump on the plane and head overseas. So we had to postpone our actual wedding. So it turned out to be a more of a family reunion for Jen than actually having the ceremony. So we were kind of glad that we had that private ceremony back in '03.
Absolutely.
Um,
And
so
what was the date in '03?
It
April
was April
19th.
19th.
April 19th.
Yeah.
Okay, same year. So,
Yes.
congratulations. I'm glad that you were smart
Appreciate it.
enough to
Yeah.
kind of have some forethought there. Good for you. And then later, when you came back from Afghanistan, how long were you there? And then when did the wedding take place? When the public wedding take place once you were here?
I returned back it was right around May, I'm sorry, April. We had the ceremony in May,
June.
or in June, I'm sorry. Can't even get my dates right.
It's all right. It's
But
all
it was
right.
like April, May was when we got back, and then a month later we had the ceremony up in Canada. Now, the whole time that I was deployed overseas with the postponing of our initial wedding, um, Jen was still working behind the scenes to have the date set in stone in case, when I did return, for us to have the actual public ceremony.
Well, that would be a little tricky because you wouldn't know exactly when he would be returning back to the States, right?
No, I actually kind of when I had to cancel some things, postpone other things, and then I waited till the new year to pick it up. Like once I knew he was almost back,
Okay.
then I had a lot of things postponed that were from the first, um, which would have been in August that we were supposed to get married in 2003.
Okay.
So I postponed it, and then in June we picked up what we could from those, and then we just kind of winged it because the worst had already happened. So once he came home, it was like a big homecoming party and our wedding. So it was really special.
Okay.
Well, what was really neat is my unit commander. He had found out what had happened with our first, or our wedding ceremony back in August of the previous year, and he put me on one of the first flights back as our unit was transitioning from Afghanistan. So I was able to kind of get a head start before the rest of the guys came home.
Oh, was
for
really
this. So
nice.
it was really,
You must have had some
really
brownie
neat.
points.
I think he just felt really bad at that, the date that we had originally set didn't work out, so it was kind of his way of saying, you know, this is kind of a fresh start for you. Go ahead and, make this happen.
Sure,
So,
because you got deployed like 10 days before the wedding.
I tell you, that was a heartbreak for both of us. I mean, we were not anticipating, the orders to cut out that soon, and they did. And we had everything set in stone a year before,
Deposits have been paid?
Yes, everything. I mean,
Wow.
we were ready to have that ceremony, and it just didn't happen.
Okay, so to kind of summarize your military stints, if you will, we have Kosovo, Afghanistan. You come back from Afghanistan, you have a public wedding,
Yes.
and then sometime after that, you have another deployment to Iraq. You finish up that deployment, you come back, and today you're looking at what?
I mean, as
In
far
terms
as
of your
Sir.
military
oh,
flow.
I was released from my military obligation back in '07. I had done active duty and then reserve time with the Army, and there was that down where I was now civilian, so to
Mhm.
speak, but now I'm a reservist once again. This time with the Air Force.
So you've
So-
done the Air Force, and now you're with. Excuse me, you've done the Army, and now you're with the Air Force.
I just switched branches, so
Switch branches.
Mhm.
Okay. Now that's a lot, just for starters. Part of the reason why we have come together is because Jen and I met out in the community, and she and I began to talk. And the more that I talked with Jen, the more that I realized that she knew a lot about what it takes to make a marriage work. And so, as a result of that, Jen shared with me that she had written a book. And the name of her book is Love's Leading Companion. Now, just for our audience, can you just tell them how they would be able to obtain your book?
At this time, you can purchase Love's Leading Companion through the Kindle and the Nook. So if you go to Amazon.com, you can look up Love's Leading Companion or Jenn Zuniga. It's JENNZUNIGA. And then also you can go to Barnes & Noble's online and look up under the Nook, Love's Leading Companion, or my last name. And you can purchase it that way. In 2012, we are hoping to have it in print, so you'll be able to get it from the bookstore in person.
Okay. Thank you, Jan. I appreciate that. Now, Love's Leading Companion. I have to say, when I first heard the title of Jen's book, first of all, I was drawn in by the title, Love's Leading Companion, but at the same time, I needed to kind of wrap my head around it, and I needed Jen to kind of explain some of the terms associated with that. So it took me, I had to put it in my own words, but Jen wrote this book as a result of the challenges that she and Robb dealt with as they had a private marriage. They were about ready to have their public marriage, and they were all of a sudden separated. And then he came back. They had the public wedding, but then they were separated again. And she describes in her book how it was and is that one gets through the process of being distant, having a relationship where there's deployment. And though they're military, many, if not all of the principles apply to couples in general, whether or not they're far away, because sometimes we can live in the same house and be far away from each other. So I would like for Jen, for you to share with us a little bit about your book. You have some new terms that I don't think most of us, have heard. And one of those terms that I was reading about was the love server. But before you talk about the love server, tell us, how does Love's Leading Companion help us in our relationships as married couples?
Okay. When I first actually began writing Love's Leading Companion, it wasn't called that. It was actually more about transitioning from a long-distance relationship to marriage. So as it evolved, I was basically being shown by the Love Companion, or Love's Leading Companion, I was being shown that there's something so much larger that's leading all of us. And in our own power, we can't hold together a relationship. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of commitment and loyalty. And there's so many twists and turns in life that you just can't, there's more than surviving them. You know, there's thriving, thriving in marriage, and there's just so much more, and we can't do it on our own. So as I continued to write, not knowing what this book would become, that's when the love companion, which I call like this invisible leadership within each of us,
Yes.
that's when that was guiding me. And so when you understand that love, the big L love, is leading us, then it changes everything, because it's no longer just in our power.
And you've mentioned in the book that each of us have this capacity within us, that love has been given to each of us, but it's our responsibility, correct me if I'm wrong, to somehow get in contact with that and follow its lead. How do we do that?
I would describe love as a seed in each of us, and when we choose to partner with love, then we're activating that seed.
And how do we partner? This is one of the things I think we need to understand better. How do we partner with love? I love the expression, by the way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a very intimidating at first, even when the title came to me, because I was like, for love to be the leading companion, that's quite the statement. But love, the capital L love, is, and so in partnering with that, we're basically saying we're not in control. We are choosing to align with love. There is one love path, and so like for the seed of love in Rob and the seed of love in me and the seed of love in you, as we're unifying today to come together, we are actually unifying with love, the big L love. So that we're actually being guided and directed and met, and that presence of love that's here right now with us, that's what's real, and that's what will connect with our audience.
Okay, we're going to get right back with you as soon as we come back.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Sherry Pittman, and I'd like to welcome you to Survive and Thrive in Marriage. We appreciate your watching the show. We want to just simply encourage, inspire, and celebrate marriages. We want for the communities to know that marriage is important. It's important for our relationships, for our children, for our schools, our communities. We need marriage as a foundation, and we want to encourage each other. We do that by inviting guest couples to be on the show to talk about, yes, some positive things about their marriage, but touch a little bit on some of the negatives too, because without a doubt, every last one of us in a marriage, we have experienced something or things that say, we don't want to do this anymore. And we simply want to let you know that whatever bump in the road you run into or whatever issues you're dealing with, you can work past most of those. Some you may not be able to work past, but most of the issues that we deal with in marriage are very common, and we can work past those. Financial issues, communication issues, those are very common. And so we just simply want to encourage you in your marriage, and we're grateful for your watching Survive and Thrive in Marriage. Hi, we're back with Robb and Jenn Zuniga, and we're just talking about Love's Leading Companion, a book that Jenn has wrote. And Jenn, you were just describing to us about how each of us have that love seed, as you described it, within us. But before we touch on that, tell us a little bit about, in general, the type of book that this is.
Okay, Love's Leading Companion is basically the modern day ever after story. It resonates a lot with the military couples, long distance relationship couples, and what I was able to do is put together a very values-based stories that I was able to put together these stories that really bring out the values and the heart of the journey. And in reading a short story from Robb and I's relationship in a decade of love and friendship, it really connects with other couples like us, and it really is able to welcome them into our world and to celebrate love itself.
And you know,
So,
you say welcome into your world, but actually you are the host and hostess for a bigger world
yeah,
if I'm right about that. Am I correct?
yes.
And that bigger world is a world that love actually is predominant, if not dominant. You want to, I'm elaborating a little bit here, but I don't want to steer the book in one way that it doesn't go. So, can you tell us a little bit when you say into, you know, your experience? It's really kind of inviting you into a bigger experience that you guys have been gifted to share. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So,
And that's quite a responsibility as well to recognize, humbly that we are each a mirror of a greater world.
and that you've been giving this gift because you and I were talking earlier about like the love server, that there's a few terms: the love server, there's the host and the hostess, there's the love guide, guest.
Yeah.
Okay, so describe to us a little bit. I really want to go back to when we were talking about the love seed. Let's go back to that.
Okay.
You said that each of us have it when we come together.
Yes. Actually, probably the best way to describe the love seed is if you think about a woman who is about to give birth. When it starts out, it's by faith. You don't see anything happening. But love is a seed. As it grows, it becomes a palace of love. It becomes a person, a form, a gift. And so if we can think of that happening inside of us as we learn more about the greater love and participate with that, then we are essentially becoming more loving human beings. And the people in our lives who are the most loving are the ones who want to be around the most because they are so loving. And it's because they're partnering with the greater love.
Right. One of the concepts that I think is needful for us to grasp, and by the way, I've told you already, you're kind of eons ahead of us here, because you do have, it's been given to you, and it's your responsibility, the two of you responsibility to invite others in if they want to come along and experience that joy as well. And so this getting in contact with that love seed and living forward your life from that. When we were talking about that earlier, it strikes me that there's a good amount of fear that we have. The reason why we don't want to like live from that place of love. So if we feel like something is not right, it's our natural human inclination to withdraw. But if we live from that place of where the love seed, as you say, is, then we actually open up ourselves as opposed to withdrawing. Is that correct?
Yes, that's very correct. I love how you describe that.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think we're on the same path here. Can you elaborate any at all in terms of what that's like to let go the fear and to live from that place of love?
Well, I'm here now, and it's hard. I mean, you have to observe the fear while you're saying yes to love, and like you look at the fear, you observe it, but you don't like give it the full attention. You have to turn back to love, and just keep letting love lead you, like one baby step at a time. And love isn't going to like drag us like really fast. It's love. It's going to take us slowly, and it's not going to force us or rush us, but it's always going to have our best interest in mind. And it's basically the glue and the companion between, a relationship and even our relationship.
Sure.
It's love itself that is companioning both of us and making it possible to have a relationship, to build a relationship, and to really give honor back to love.
I hear two things. I hear some honoring, even though my needs may not be met. I may feel like I've been shortchanged a little bit, but rather than giving into and fanning the fire of my being shortchanged, I suspend that, even though I know I kind of felt that. But I go to that love spot and prefer you
Yes.
over. It's almost a little sacrificial.
I think it's more of a relationship first concept, because so often I think as humans we want what we want now.
Yes.
And we want the fluff, and we want all the cushion, and I'm all about the cozy stuff. but I've had to learn relationship has to come first, and love has taught me that.
Now, let's talk a little bit about nudging.
Okay.
Can you, and Rob, can you speak to this at all, how love nudges us?
Love is like it's a two-way. My interpretation of love is it's got to be two-way. Love is never one way, because then love would be selfish, and love is always naturally unselfish. It's selfless, and so I mean, in order for love to work, it's got to involve a receiver and a giver in that aspect. So, and even in our relationship, we see that a lot. It's just, in order to give love, you almost have to be able to receive it at the same time, and you put yourself in a situation where you're almost vulnerable. You know, your shell is gone, but that's usually how love works, is that, I mean, you give it and then you also receive it, not in a very selfish way. But I don't know if that's a really good example or not.
That's good.
That's really
I
good.
like the way you expressed that. Jan, can you talk a little bit about what the nudging, how love nudges us? Like, let's say I have that fear that I'm being shortchanged, or, you know, I just kind of felt that. But I don't like act on that and fan the fire. And do I kind of get quiet for a minute and try to get in tune with that love seed so I can be nudged?
I think I mean, we're all made up a little differently. Love knows us, and so it's always going to come to each one of us in our own intimate way. For me, I see love everywhere. I see beauty everywhere. Love is beauty as well, and you see it in nature where it's in pure form. You see it through children, and it's everywhere. So I guess having the eyes to see love is important, and a lot of that is being, like Rob said, being open and vulnerable, which is the hardest thing to do, because
is hard.
as humans we want to protect our
Well,
heart,
sure.
and we want to have control, but basically the opposite of control is giving to love.
Well, you know, I think you bring up a good point, because we do want to protect ourselves, and the fact of the matter is there's lots of good reasons that we should protect ourselves. However, in a marriage, there has to be a letting down of the guards. And, you know, it can be very difficult for a couple who is kind of at odds with each other, because they both have basically moved away from love,
Yes.
correct? And their inability to hear and perceive love and to follow its nudges may actually leave them further apart for a longer period of time. But if at least one of them, and, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, if at least one of them is willing to forfeit their own position and extend love, to not be so much concerned about their own interest as to show interest for the other person, then they have a chance, because if the other person responds to that, but sometimes the other person just wants to take advantage of it more, and that's really a hard call.
And it's really difficult. It is hard, because you don't know the person that you're investing in, whether or not they're going to be receptive or if they're going to take advantage of you. When Jen and I first started dating, we had a lot of baggage that, as a couple, we had to sift through. A lot of insecurities, personal insecurities. So these were items that we had to address with each other in order for love to actually work. Until you get to that point, apart from the physical attraction and
Sure.
The lovey-dovey aspect of it.
Sure, the
I mean,
newness.
Yes.
I love that word.
Love is essentially a decision. It has to be done by both parties, not just one. I mean, it can be done by one, but then you get, love can never be complete, because it's always involving two people and not just the one half. I mean,
Well, Rob, I think you make a good point, because we do all bring baggage. Sometimes we think we don't have any baggage, which is even worse than having it. When you have it and know you have it, at least you can work with that. But if you have it and think you don't, then that's even more difficult. But I think too, I see this fear factor arising again, because we all come with baggage, and sometimes that baggage gets someone gets close to the baggage, like maybe we want to lie about our age, or lie about if we've ever had a child, or lie about how our finances are good or how great they are. We just kind of don't. Some of those things, they just feel uncomfortable, and we don't exactly want to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. Because, and I guess maybe there's a timing, and perhaps love nudges us even. Not so much, of course, not to lie, but love might just say, why can we talk about that when we get to know each other a little bit more or something? Because I remember days when I first enter into a relationship, and you want everything to be so perfect, and you want to be perfect because you like this person. You don't want to do anything to ruin it, and you certainly don't want to tell them anything about yourself, the baggage that you think will scare them off or make them say, oh my gosh, what am I doing with this person? So, and I know you mentioned that you guys came into the relationship with baggage. How did you guys handle that? Now, you didn't have the whole love piece at the time
I didn't know
happened.
anything about love. I did not, honestly.
But Robb, you were aware that you were coming with some baggage. I'm asking specifically, or were you both aware?
I think I had my insecurities just because I grew up in a broken family, and
Like many today.
and that's the norm. And a lot of people, when they grow up seeing what their parents went through, that's all they know. And then apart from what they're watching on TV and in movies, and Hollywood does, I'll give them credit. Hollywood does try to communicate that essence of love. But there comes a point where after the happy, the happy ending, well, what happens after that? After the point where they meet. So the idea is, once you get to that point where you've got two people meeting, I mean, what happens afterwards? I mean, we don't hardly hear any stories about that kind of stuff.
And that's the ever after story,
yes.
right?
And that's
yes.
the relationship
and
part.
And
The
this
relationship.
this is what we're trying to live out as a couple, because marriage can work, and it's sad to say that the average marriage now.
I'm sorry for
I'm sorry,
interrupting you.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to continue. I hope you'll come back as guests, and we will continue to talk about this some more. Thank you. We've enjoyed having you, and until next time, we'll see you then.